The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Now, my haere mai and welcome to Sarah's Country, a place for you to call home to your regular updates of what's really happening in the farming of food and fashion in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Sarah Perium, and it's a pleasure to serve you up a menu of innovation, celebration, frustration and motivation. Thanks to our family at Farmers Weekly for the in-depth news and views that feeds the soul of Sarah's Country. If you would like to be served up a highlight of articles daily into your inbox, do not hesitate to sign up at farmersweekly.co.nz to My Daily Digest. Trust me, it's worth it. You will get the rundown on what guests we have on the show at 4 p.m. daily before we go live straight into your inbox. And if you do it within the next week, you can take home an XR 150 Honda motorbike, all thanks to Blue Wing Honda. And talking about blue, it's Blue November, where men across New Zealand shove the shaver at the back of the drawer and let it all hang out on their face, that is, for a month. Now, my partner has a great slug going at the moment, and for someone who doesn't traditionally have a thing for the mow, me, he actually does suit it. It is interesting how much a hairstyle, whether it's on your head, your face, or woman, your pits, it defines you. We've conjured up what it says about a person, haven't we? I mean, men watching live, are you a mow or a beard man? I'd love to know in the comments below. Women, what do you think? Thumbs up. Big thumbs up in the comments for, yeah, you can do a mow or a beard on a man, or a spewing emoji or something you find more appropriate if it's a no-go. Long hair on a man, are we there yet socially acceptable of these types of things in the farming sector? I really think we've come a long way, and I'm a very open-minded liberal person. I think you'd probably realise that. But man buns, they may be making a real comeback as well, to attract a cab near you. Have you ever had an issue with your choice of facial or head hair? I know there was many over lockdown that did not want to let go of those lockdown beards. I want to hear, and let's talk about this. I have a bit of fun throughout this show of Sarah's Country. Mr. Rock, who does have a beard and wears it daily, regardless of the month. How do you find it? How do you find keeping the beard? I mean, you're never too scruffy, but when did you decide, you know what, I'm going to have a beard and it's going to define who I am as a man?
Does it define me as a man? Wow. I don't know. Lockdown, I guess. I just stopped shaving during lockdown, and then I shaved it all off not long after and missed it, so brought it back again.
I'd love to know, what are your thoughts for those who can see Joel watching live? Do you think Joel suits a beard? Do you think you should keep it? I mean, we're talking all about this.
Rude.
No, well, we'll get some comments from our viewers. And of course, wherever you are listening, let's have a little bit of have fun in the comments below. Now, talking about hair choices, I'm purposefully blonde for a reason. Did you know that? I've come to think, Joel, and everyone else watching and listening, it bides me time until men work out that I have a brain. Is that feminist?
I don't really know what that is.
My favourite Dolly quote is, people call her dumb blonde, and she laughs because she's neither. And I feel that, my blonde hair has become a signature, and as it does for people with beards and mustaches, etc. I'd like to know your thoughts, because this week we're drawing to the close of November, and Movember, the month for raising funds and awareness for men's health, physical and mental, is super important to highlight. So let it just be be a reminder to you to get that health check that you have been putting off, because as they say in farming, what you can measure, you can manage. So treat your health the same as your farm or business, and both will reward you. That is my mantra for this evening. Tonight on Serious Country, would you believe that after 78 years, 87 years, the Ahuwhenua Trophy Award celebrating Māori agri-business in this country has finally been won by a horticulture operation. Chair Kingi Smiler shares the evolution of the event with us after 7:20. New Zealand's trade officials have given the EU and UK an earful over their plans to carve up agricultural import quotas, and rightly so. Charles Finny, trade commentator, has the latest on Brexit, New Zealand's risky relationship woes with China, his thoughts on Biden, and how a dreamy Indian bilateral agreement would see him happy. All that after 7:30. And I'm trying to make trade sexy there if you hadn't noticed. How important is the safety and sustainability of food packaging to the Chinese? Well, Dr. Florian, Graichen, General Manager for Forests to Bio-Based Products at Scion, will explain the research into Chinese consumers' attitudes in the wake of numerous food scares to close the show. But firstly, farm freshwater plans are set to become an industry requirement following the government's reforms. But one of the main concerns voiced by the industry is that there's not enough people with the necessary training to make the requirement a reality. We're going to discuss the latest messy courses, as well as how action and catchment groups can spread knowledge like wildfire, next with Simon Glennie from AbacusBio.
This is Serious Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. You reckon it'll come out? Cover it in talcum powder, leave it 10 minutes, and you'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You caught a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
Well, as a result of changes to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, almost all farms in New Zealand will need to have a freshwater plan. One of the concerns voiced by the industry has been there are not enough people with the necessary training to make that requirement a reality. Massey University has created some short courses to meet that growing demand with training in that area, and you can read more about that in this week's Farmers Weekly. A gentleman I know who has been actively involved for many years in supporting farmers, evaluating the change coming at them and implementing those plans is Simon Glennie, who joins us now. Simon is a consultant at AbacusBio. Welcome back, Simon. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah.
And before we crack into it, we're talking about beds tonight. And for those listening on podcast won't be able to see that, is that a COVID edition?
I guess you could call it a COVID edition. It's been here for nearly a year now. So, I'm really lazy. It adds another few minutes to every week, Sarah. So I don't have to shave every day. But yeah, it's. I don't know if it's there to stay though.
Is it? So it's not becoming a part of what defines the Simon Glennie look now?
I don't know if anything will define that at all, Sarah.
But in terms of Simon Glennie's experience, we're talking about the article Training Targets Farm Freshwater Plans in this week's Farmers Weekly, and very much talking about the Massey University courses. But firstly, can you paint the picture for our listeners and viewers on the scale of the knowledge gap we have in New Zealand to progress the requirements of this National Environmental Standard?
Well, I think it's probably significant, Sarah. It's hard to say. As a consultant and working with farmers in the industry, I guess part of our business is that we need to get paid for what we do. We need to charge by the hour. So our role and my role in supporting farmers and our role in supporting farmers has been really production based, because of that requirement to make money. Now, this whole environment side is really driven by compliance. So so really helping farmers in a different way. And there's a lot of uncertainty still about what's coming and how the rules will be finally put in place and interpreted. There's a lot of noise about farm environment plans. And really, I think once that's all sorted out, then we'll figure out what the knowledge gap is. And one of the key areas, I think, where there is a knowledge gap is that you might have people that understand the legislation and understand the requirements for farmers, but then they won't understand the farm system. So they don't understand the pressure that's coming. And what can be achieved and what's realistic in terms of change and the management of that change on different farms. So there's certainly, I can see a massive knowledge gap in that area. Examples are we see overseer models now coming through the industry where the stock reconciliations are patently wrong, but they have been done by people that have been trained in overseer, but they haven't been able to pick up that the stock reconciliation is wrong. So that farm, whatever's been modelled, is not what is actually happening on the farm. And it does matter. It makes a big difference to the outputs in that model. So there are examples there. I guess it'll take some time to support these changes and some money as well. And I guess that's where farmers are expecting that, hang on, these requirements are not just for us, they are for the whole country and the industry. Who's paying for this?
I spent some time yarning to farmers at AgFest and a variety of different farming systems between dairy and beef, and no one was the same in how they can see it affecting their business, from cropping, pugging, through to fencing, and simply so therefore a blanket rule, if we took it down to a regional side of it on the coast, still wouldn't even help. It's on a case-by-case basis. And so therefore providing short courses, and absolutely thank you so much to Massey for doing this, where can we teach the variations and being able to pick up around farm systems?
Oh boy, that's a difficult ask. And I think there will be a need for some collaboration, because it's a very difficult package to get in one person. In fact, it's nigh on impossible, I guess. So having somebody do a farm plan on its own, without knowledge of the farm systems, without listening and maybe getting some input from other people, would be probably a farm plan that's destined to fail. And I guess it's all very well getting the knowledge, and I think the places like Massey obviously are where we're going to get that, where we're going to bridge that knowledge gap. But I think there'll be a need for a little collaboration within that to get really effective plans.
when you're talking about funding, this particular funding has been provided by the New Zealand Fertiliser Association. So when you talk about, extension from our fertiliser companies and our rural supply companies, they are the most engaged on farm on a regular basis to understand the individual needs. Is there a way that collaboration could happen between those two parties and groups, and it's not to the benefit commercially of anybody in those groups either?
Yes, well, I think, the fertiliser companies are largely still cooperatives, so they should be working for their shareholders or the farmers, largely. And I think that's so, and also there's models there within their fertiliser companies where they are doing farm overseer modelling and looking at the environmental side of things, and they're charging by the hour for that, so it's not something that it comes through their fertiliser. We've just cut out there. So it's not something that's coming through their the fertiliser payments from the farmers. It's actually separate from it. Yeah. So it's been recognised as such. So that's happening on the fertiliser side. And the odd farmer's getting a really big shock when they get a bill for quite a substantial amount for their farm plan. That's and they get a little bit of a shock about that. But it's a commercial model. Farmers are engaging these people that are getting paid by the hour to do this work. So that's the reality that's coming. And as far as the farm supply companies go, I think that's a hard ask. It's a very different set of skills. I've done some of the short courses at Massey on nutrient management, great courses, and I really enjoyed it. I've done some chemistry at university level. I got back into that. I enjoyed it. It's something that, not many people like soil science, but I tend to quite enjoy that side of things. But it's not for everybody. And training those people at the farm service level up into that level of understanding, I think that's going to be a difficulty. It's a particular type of person we need in that space. And also, generally, those people don't necessarily fully understand the farm systems we're dealing with. But look, I think like that collaborative approach, it's going to be a team of many that are going to be required to end up with effective farm plans.
Yeah, and your experience with RMPP groups and catchment groups and your work with beef and lamb, that is in a very, very effective way of being able to spread knowledge. Is that not the right place for it?
Yes, so certainly farmers have taken up the opportunity to skill up in those areas, but a lot of the groups I've dealt with haven't done much work on the environment side of things within those groups. I guess they're playing a wait and see games, not game. It's actually probably a valid strategy to wait until they know what they need to do and then act. Because trying to front foot this might not be the best strategy. Certainly, what we need is a really clear guidance about what is required, and then take some measured steps to achieve that. So I think that's and I'm absolutely certain that the farmer groups that you speak of, and they're pan-industry groups, are a great way for farmers to learn what is required from a point of view of being able to engage experts to help with that, but also to actually travel and see what's happening in other regions and how other farmers are planning to bridge the gap and make progress on the environmental standards.
So we're talking about the Massey University short courses, Introduction to New Zealand Farm Systems, a 6-week course. But in carrying on from what you're saying is an online resource that will guide students through the development of a desktop farm environment plan. What sort of work is AbacusBio doing to have engagement at this level with tertiary providers on how we can do this better?
Probably Abacus is a slightly different model. And we're looking at the moment how we engage directly with farmers and farmer groups on the environmental side. But equally, we're also doing some quite high-level advisory work, at industry level around greenhouse gas and whatnot, and some commercial products in the space. But in terms of the tertiary industry, not a lot at the moment that I'm aware of. But I'm not involved as closely with the hierarchy at Abacus that I maybe once was.
Do you believe in everything that you've learnt and you're supporting farmers? Do we need to actually take a step back? And I've heard multiple times, let's bring climate change requirements, ETS, water, and all of these things together to make it a bit of an overview, a holistic plan of the farm, as opposed to all of these individual moving targets.
Yeah, too many silos, I guess, and I think that the overarching approach is a good one. I think the short answer is yes, Sarah. I think we do need to bring them together. That's part of the land and environment plan is all of those aspects of it. It's not just a freshwater plan. It's not just a fertility and fertilizer impact on the environment kind of mitigation plan. It will bring carbon in time as well as biodiversity as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Simon Glennie is a farm consultant with AbacusBio, and it's great to bring some practicality around these short courses. But again, we do have to congratulate Massey University on making progress in that, because as Simon said there, this particular challenge is many hands make light work. After the break, we're joined by Kingi Smiler, who is the chairman of the Ahuwhenua Trophy Management Committee, and he will share with us the successes from the event and the recognition that horticulture has now got within the Māori Agribusiness Awards.
This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce higher quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Welcome to Sarah's Country. If you've just joined us live, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in live. Of course, if you do miss any of the interviews, they are available on podcast on demand first thing in the morning, thanks to our awesome team based in the UK who turn those around for us so amazingly and efficiently. I know that they are consumed and loved by all. Now, usually the domain of dairy or sheep and beef farmers, for the first time in 87 years, the Ahuwhenua Trophy has been awarded for excellence in, trophy is awarded for excellence in Māori agribusiness, and it has been won by a horticulture operation. With Te Kaha 15B Hena Ora Orchard claiming the top prize, and reported by journalist Colin Williscroft in this week's Farmers Weekly. This year, for the first time, horticulturalists have been included in this competition. Ahuwhenua Trophy Management Committee Chair Kingi Smiler joins us now. Evening, Kingi. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It would have been a wonderful celebration, especially post-COVID, getting all together.
Absolutely. It was fantastic, spectacular evening with 800 people in the hall in Rotorua, being hosted by Te Aroa, and it was delayed by the COVID pandemic, but we still managed to hold the finals evening and the final round judging, which was fantastic to finish it off this year. We had actually got to the stage of we completed the first round, and we were about 3 days from travelling to do the final round judging before actually level 4 lockdown occurred. So it was that close, but we had progressed it enough to complete the first round and then have all the preparation done for the final round, which we completed in October, and then had the awards dinner last Friday in Rotorua Event Centre. It was an amazing event.
Now, what combination of skills and talent have you been looking for in these awards over so many decades?
Yeah, okay. So the competition was started by Sir Ahuwhenua and Lord Bledisloe. So these cups are also known as Bledisloe Cups. And for the horticultural competition, there's now 3 of them. And so originally it started with dairy in 1933, was first awarded. Interesting enough, the first awards was also handled in Rotorua at Tamatakapua Marae, where the Governor-General, Lord Bledisloe at that time, presented the trophy to the winner, John Swinton, who was from Raukokiri. Interesting enough, Te Kaha, 87 years later, is from the same region for the inaugural horticulture competition. So that was pretty amazing sort of combination of events over a long period of time. And so both Ahuwhenua and Bledisloe were both looking to create a competition to improve the standards of farming for Māori particularly as they've now come through a phase of just now dealing with all the remnants of the country. And so it was important for the lifting of the standard and good practice. And Lord Bledisloe had a cup designed by Goldie, so the cups that are designed by Goldie, and they're all replicas of each other. So we just recently had the horticultural one done. It was done by Village Goldsmiths in Wellington, and then they had silversmiths from London to spin the silver and to do this design. And so they copied it with exacting terminology. So if you've seen the Rugby Bledisloe Cup, these cups are that size, and they're magnificent trophies and very well sought after.
Wow, that's fantastic. And let's celebrate the win of Hinaora Orchard. What made them absolutely stand out to take home over traditional dairy and sheep and beef?
Yeah, so the competition is structured slightly differently in the sense that they're competing with dairy and sheep and beef. So what has happened over time, originally it was an all-encompassing competition, so sheep and beef and dairy, and then they were having trouble to separate both dairy and sheep and beef farmers, and so the first cup was put in place in 1933, so the next cup was then put in place in 1954. So we wanted one specifically for horticulture. So this was, again, so for only horticultural growers and farmers are the ones that compete for this particular award, although many of our Māori trusts and corporations have multi-purpose land uses, and so many do dairy, sheep and beef, forestry and horticulture and, fruit and vegetables right across that sector. So this was for the sector of horticulture, and it just so happened that our 3 finalists this year were all doing kiwi fruit.
And of course, it's really just showing how integral the growth of horticulture is for Māori agribusiness into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably Māori horticulture is probably about 10% of the industry at the moment, so it's very significant and growing all the time. And these finalists have been in kiwi fruit and orchards for a very long time, since some of them since the 1970s. So some of them have been through all the cycles over a long period of time. And so the other 2 finalists were Ngāi Tūkairangi, which is from Matapihi and Tauranga. And so their kiwi fruit holdings are all gold holdings of 100 hectares. So they're major investor in kiwi fruit. The other finalist was Otama Marere from Te Puke, and their orchard size was about 18 hectares. And then we had Te Kaha, which is actually the smallest of 8 hectares. And it was an amazing story. And so they're sort of isolated area, water. And when they started off 20 years ago, they had to buy back their lease. It was only had a subsistence level at that stage. and they've built it into an amazing high returning asset. So all of these, the finalists, all benchmark in the top 10% of kiwi fruit growers in New Zealand. And so their standard is absolutely outstanding. And Te Kaha particularly showed significant innovation against all those challenges to build up an amazing business over time, where they've done joint ventures and they had a huge amount of innovation of working with others, creating a community where they create training programs. And so when they wanted water, they created a water program also for their local marae and for the housing in the area. They bought a holiday camp that was in the area so they could house their workers and also use it as a accommodation for the whānau when they needed it, and also as a holiday camp. So they've had this created their own nursery, and now they're supplying, plants all around the Bay of Plenty region. And so they've done that all from these small beginnings and joint ventures that they've done with other Māori trusts and corporations.
It's incredibly inspiring, as is the inaugural Ahuwhenua Young Māori Grower Award as well. How exciting to see the youth coming through, in particular more and more into horticulture as well.
Yeah, no, we had 3 amazing finalists. Brandon Cross, who's from Tauranga, Phoenicia Tuhiwai, which is up in Kaitaia, and then Matu Taira Akonga, who was on an apple orchard in the Hawke's Bay. And so they were 3, really talented people. And the winner that took out the Young Grower Award was Matu Taira Akonga. And, they're showing great talent and opportunity for our young rangatahi, and doing an amazing job.
Kingi, before you go, the future of Māori agribusiness is looking very bright. But what are one of those major challenges that you'd like to see being overcome to allow for Māori agribusiness to grow further and flourish?
Oh, look, I think it's more about the Ahuwhenua competition. Just the leaders and the exemplars that come from the competition are showing both Māori and the whole economy about, I think, the role of kaitiakitanga, which is a big part of the judging, and so building great stewardship and sustainability, because we're farming for the next generation. So these land holdings are being passed on from one generation to the next, and so meeting those challenges and leaving it in a better place for the next generation is the fundamental driver behind this agribusiness. So if you look going forward about the climate change and the freshwater challenges that we have at the moment, and I noticed one of your last speakers was talking about freshwater farm environment plans, and so those challenges of meeting, the new regulations around Te Mana o Te Wai, and building that sustainability and adapting and being resilient to those changes. I think Māori growers and farmers are well placed to help lead the industry, to meet those challenges and build a greater success into the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your time, Kingi Smiler, there on the committee of the Ahuwhenua Māori Trophy that was awarded for the first time in 87 years to a horticulture operation. And congratulations to all of the finalists and winners. It's an absolute treasure, that awards, and I love following it every year when they come out. Now, coming up in Serious Country, if you follow along to most of our episodes, you'll know 2 things. I love a good trade chat, and number 2, this Brexit situation is becoming a cluster for New Zealand, with our future sheep meat quotas hanging on the hooks on a calendar month left of negotiations before the UK say sayonara to the European Union. Charles Finny will join us very shortly to give us thoughts on that, China, and what he thinks of Biden.
This is Sarah's Country.
sheep meat, dairy and beef are due to be split between the pair when the UK completes its exit from the EU on December 31. We do know this. However, what is going on behind the scenes at the WTO? Joining us now is trade commentator Charles Finny. Evening, Charles.
Good evening, Sarah. Good to see you.
It's becoming a real cluster, and we're under just about a month to go. Do you believe that this quota is going to be evenly divided in such a short amount of time? Are we getting close, or what will it look like on the other side if we don't?
Okay, well, look, it is a very complicated equation, and there is good news and bad news. So I'm not quite as exercised on this as Nigel Sterling, good friend of mine, but I think New Zealand is rightly worried. First point is that the way the EU and UK have treated these quotas is somewhat outrageous. They shouldn't be unilaterally determining what happens. It should be something that is negotiated. The problem, I think, is that there are multiple countries involved. And no one's actually quite sure what we're looking at in terms of the post-Brexit regime. The UK and the EU are still negotiating. Now, in recent hours, like the last 24 hours, there is increasing evidence and some signs that we might be getting quite close to a resolution of that negotiation. So that is the negotiation between UK and EU over the trading arrangement that will apply between the two of them. And once we get that, then I think the negotiations over the quota arrangements will get serious. Now, I think New Zealand's in a much better position than some of those parties that are negotiating with the EU and UK, in that we are in the middle of free trade agreement negotiations with both parties. Indeed, in a few minutes, day 2 of the 9th round of the EU-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement negotiations will kick off. So we have the opportunity to get this corrected through a second channel. So we've got the WTO negotiations going on, but we've also got a bilateral free trade agreement negotiation going on, and likewise with the UK. We've got to be patient, wait for UK and EU to solve their problems. Then I think we can start negotiating seriously, because they'll be able to know what their bottom lines are. Luckily for us, we've got this free trade agreement negotiation. So I think that we should be planning on several months of the quota arrangements being in place as the EU and UK determine unilaterally. However, long term, I think there will be another solution.
Is it really the weight of the WTO members coming together when Nigel wrote here that New Zealand's comments were endorsed by Russia, the United States, Canada, India, Australia, Mexico, Paraguay and Uruguay? It's not just us alone in this, is it? No, except the quotas that we're most worried about are just about us. So those other members of the WTO are worried about their own quota arrangements. Ours is a particularly valuable one, hard fought. It's basically compensating us for UK's original entry into the EU and the market we lost, and is on very preferential terms, which is why it's so important. So in terms of those bilateral agreements that sit to the side, how is things progressing where in the sensitivity with our direct negotiations with the EU, in particular around dairy? Okay, well, we don't really know, because we have had a leaked offer from the EU, which was pretty terrible. The EU is proposing to revise that offer. That revised offer isn't going to be coming to New Zealand anytime soon, because, again, it leads back to Brexit. The UK is a major competitor of New Zealand in the products that we produce, and they also want to trade into the EU. So the EU isn't going to be able to finalise any position until it knows what access the UK is going to be enjoying into the EU. So I think everything is queued up behind that negotiation between Brussels and London.
Once that's out of the way, we can start to make some progress. So it's interesting that our negotiation with the UK was meant to have its third round before Christmas. I note that that's now been delayed until January. I think that is because of two factors. One, the UK is going to make its initial market access offer to us at that negotiation. So we'll begin to see how serious they are about a high-quality free trade agreement. But secondly, they don't know what they can grant us because they're not sure what they're going to be granting the EU. So very frustrating for New Zealand, but we just have to be patient.
And of course, jumping up and down and throwing lawsuits around is certainly not something being recommended by Meat Industry Association's Chief Executive Suma Karapiva. It's certainly just going to be a wait and see. And we are small fry in the big scheme of things, aren't we?
Well, Suma is a very wise person, and I often defer to her. I think that in the short term, a case in the WTO isn't going to be resolving anything because these things take many months, if not years. So we're best to be negotiating. But if in the long term we don't get this resolved satisfactorily in terms of our bilateral free trade agreements, there's no guarantee that they will be finalised, for example, then I think we should be thinking about WTO action. Without doubt, the EU is in breach of its legal commitments to New Zealand.
So 2021 could be the World Cup of trade negotiations where everything comes to a head. Charles, you'll be looking forward to that.
Well, look, I think some of us are actually hoping that trade policy will become boring again without Donald Trump in the White House. But I think that in terms of New Zealand trade policy, 2021 is looking to be a very interesting year.
Yeah, and talking about Trump and that China relationship, New Zealand-China relationship is being said that it can withstand this friction. We're speaking about the interference with Five Eyes and the flow-on effect. It is a crucial market to us, but what do you believe is behind that we can withstand this friction?
Well, look, I think that if it were Australia or the US doing something that we really didn't think was proper, we would say so. And good friends can have disagreements. They agree on most things, but they can have disagreements on some issues. And that's how I see the situation. I think that China should be seeing this recent comment on Hong Kong in exactly that light. We're a democracy. We believe in open societies. We want to see Hong Kong as democratic as possible with an independent judiciary, with a free press. And we are rightly concerned if we see these things being restricted by the Chinese government. China agreed that Hong Kong would have a period after the British withdrew where these things would be protected. They backtracked on those agreements, and it's quite proper for countries such as New Zealand to make statements. That said, we want to have a close relationship with China, and there will be issues where we will be agreeing with China and disagreeing with the US and others. In this case, I think we're in the right position. But China should not overinterpret New Zealand's position. We want to be friends with China. We want to have a close trading relationship, close political relationship. And there are issues where we're going to be working very closely. Climate change, for example.
What's the sort of commentary in your circles around where Joe Biden will stand?
Well, I think a lot of us are really looking forward to the 20th of January because we are sick and tired of a totally unpredictable United States. We just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. We have to stay up all night looking at our Twitter feeds to figure out what US policy is. Life is going to return more to normal. But that's great. However, there are underlying tensions between the United States and China. They were there before Donald Trump became president, and they're still there. And so those are going to be addressed by the Biden administration, and China won't always like that. But I think we're going to see a more normal way of approaching those issues. So it won't be diplomacy by Twitter or megaphone. It will be diplomacy by diplomacy. So there'll be discussions between officials on the quiet, between embassies, between senior leaders on telephones. You won't be reading about it as publicly. But those tensions are still there, and there is still risk that there will be serious trade disputes between those two major players.
And lastly, Charles, it would be remiss of me to not also talk to you about the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, and that exclusion of India so far. I mean, that's a very big missed opportunity. What's your thoughts on how long it will take to get them on board?
Well, we've taken a number of years trying to get them on board. And frankly, the chances over the next year or two were very slim. So I think the members have decided, well, look, we just can't wait for India any longer. This is a valuable agreement in its own right. It's probably more valuable for some of the other players than it is for us. We already have free trade agreements with all the other parties to the agreement. We've got with ASEAN, we've got them with China, with Korea and Japan. But Japan, Korea and China do not have any free trade agreement linking them. This is the first time this is happening. This is three very major economies, three very major markets for New Zealand. So anything that is going to help make those markets perform better, be more open, help growth in those economies, that's a good thing for New Zealand. But the benefits are more indirect for us with this one than direct. There are some gains into Indonesia and Thailand, but basically this is an agreement which is going to be really helpful in terms of facilitating trade as opposed to liberalising trade. It's going to make us, all the members, operate from the same rules, have the same rules of origin, and it's going to sort of tidy up what we call the noodle bowl of free trade agreements in the area. It's going to simplify things for exporters, increase certainty. A great thing that's happened. But I hope we keep on trying to get India into the agreement, or keep on trying for a bilateral agreement, because that would be really powerful for New Zealand. Unfortunately, the Indian government doesn't seem to be prepared to be willing to take on the obligations that would be necessary to make an agreement possible.
Is this connected to the size of their dairy farms in India specifically?
I think dairy is a huge sensitivity there. They're a major producer, and they're worried about competition. I think it's actually more about economic models. They still have a very inward-looking economic model, sort of an India-first version of Donald Trump, and they're really reluctant to open to really efficient producers such as us. You know, the idea that New Zealand is going to swamp the Indian market with milk is ridiculous. But they're just not willing to take that risk. But it's not just about New Zealand. I think actually it was more about China than New Zealand, and about China and manufacturing. So yes, we would be very competitive in the in agriculture space, as is China, incidentally. But China's super competitive, isn't it, in terms of manufacturing, and India is a major manufacturing powerhouse. So I think it's more about that.
Well, hopefully we can individually just get into bed with India and be done with it.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, Charles, it's always an absolute pleasure for you to break down the world's trade and what's going on in all parts and pockets, and how New Zealand is exposed to that. So I really appreciate your time on Cirrus Country. And now lastly on the show, we're going to be talking to Dr. Florian Graichen, the General Manager for Forests to Bio-Based Products. And this is at Scion, on the research into packaging perceptions into China.
This is Cirrus Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse thief,
or bee suits,
children, chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this, but at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
grow, milk, dredge,
rear, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Well, you've been a bit of a quiet bunch in the comments live with us tonight, but that's okay. I'm assuming you're all out checking that rain gauge. So therefore, I'd like you to tell me, what was it like at your place in what short period of time? Because what happened across parts of the North Island and majority of the North Island, and parts of the South Island is a huge downpour in a short amount of time. Let me know, how is it at your place, that surface flooding around, and what do you think you got in the gauge? I'd like to know in the comments below, as well as your thoughts on Movember. Mustaches or beards? Yes or no? What's your thoughts? Super easy. All you have to do is give me a thumbs up or a bit of a comment below. Now, Farmers Weekly has this section that I turn to nearly probably straight away, apart from page 1 to 3 where all the hot goss is. New thinking. And what is covered in this week's New Thinking is something quite extraordinary. We're talking about the packaging perceptions of the Chinese. And Richard Rennie has reported that Scion researchers are looking forward to a survey that they are doing around the Chinese's consumer attitudes towards food safety and packaging. Have they changed post-COVID? A couple of years, pre-COVID, the world was absolutely obsessed with packaging. But now food security and safety is certainly something that we value more. Are we starting to swing back to that? 2 years ago, research into this consumer attitudes in the wake of numerous food scares was done and revealed, perhaps unsurprisingly, that they were more concerned about food safety than sustainable packaging. This is the Chinese. So we're joined now by Dr. Florian Graichen, the General Manager of Forest to Bio-Based Products for Scion. Florian, what a cool part of Scion to work in.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think the same. It's one of the most exciting areas, and it's so relevant and so topical, not just for the packaging industry, but for us as a country as a whole, and for all our exporters.
For those who are not familiar with who Scion are, could you please explain in how they are getting into packaging?
Scion is one of New Zealand's crown research institutes, and traditionally we've been all about forestry, but now it is much more about also transitioning New Zealand to a circular bioeconomy, and packaging is absolutely critical in this transition. There will be no sustainability or sustainable economy until packaging is also sustainable.
So, I mean, we've seen a huge swing in attitudes towards a lot of things to do with COVID. And food packaging is something that I didn't give too much thoughts about. But the Chinese haven't always been as prevalent about sustainability over food safety. Or am I wrong?
That's one of the elements we would like to explore further. And traditionally, sustainability didn't play such a big role. But we all have seen the changes of ability to even export what traditionally New Zealand did, our plastics for recycling into other countries, and China said no, and other countries said no to that. So now sustainability came much more into their understanding and into their thoughts. And it was interesting to observe this until COVID started, and suddenly across the whole world, sustainability, climate change nearly disappeared. But what we're seeing now much more is the return of that the world started to understand how to live with COVID. And the discussions in packaging return now to this, the questions around sustainability, recyclability, compostability, and also food safety.
What work is going on around putting sort of pressure on manufacturers to have the recyclability of the products that we export?
For a lot of countries and a lot of parts in the world, that it will become absolutely critical. That the package in itself, or the package that has to support the product, has to fit into these recycling or compostability streams as well. So we can see that countries start banning certain substances or certain material just because of that. But it's also for the consumers. So the consumers are demanding these they want to know what I'm buying, what I'm purchasing. Is this appropriate, and is this okay? And does it fit into the sustainability picture?
Can you tell us about the Ellen MacArthur Foundation New Plastic Economy Global Commitment? This is very cool.
This is one of these very exciting initiatives where some of the biggest companies, global companies, have committed to sustainability around packaging, but also around plastic. So what that leads to is that even as a smaller company, if you are a supplier to them, even if you don't believe it or if you wouldn't believe into it, you have to support them to deliver their sustainability goals. In New Zealand, it's interestingly, Scion at the moment is also looking at a New Zealand-specific new plastics economy roadmap to understand what would it mean in our country, what is required, what type of plastic do we bring in, where is it used, how is it used, and what would appropriate then recycling or end-of-life infrastructure look like.
What sort of, I mean, I know Eugenie Sage was extremely passionate about single-use plastic. She's not, unfortunately, in this term to continue on that work. But what work is still underway to continue to potentially even tax unrecyclable products and some form of tariff coming into our country if we have to process that waste here?
So there is ongoing work that we have started last year and 2 years ago around the roadmap for the country. We are looking at specific fruit and produce labeling. We all know this in the compost that you have your fruit stickers there, and then when you put it in the compost, you will find them again even years later. And a couple of further of these initiatives to understand and minimize waste. So that's all still ongoing. But what we've seen, the commitment and especially the interest in consumers and companies is just growing. And there is nearly no company left that hasn't a sustainability goal, recyclability goal, or aspiration to do that. That is nearly hard to find.
That is absolutely fantastic. Now, as a leader in sustainable bio-based materials, can you tell us about the work on bioplastics and biomaterials, and particularly around the opportunities for our waste from our harvest and production systems and things like forestry and others?
So that's a great opportunity for us as a country. So New Zealand traditionally has not manufactured plastics or polymers. So we have imported plastics and polymers and turned it into our products. But here are two opportunities. One is the what traditionally was referred to as waste, as you said, actually is more and more considered a resource. So the terminology waste is something we want to rule out, and that can be the feedstock for specific bioplastic manufacture. So you could envisage you want to package one of our great primary products, and the plastic or the packaging has been made of what has been produced as a side stream or a byproduct of the growing or harvesting process. So that's a truly circular story where the product is packaged in what it was grown or what it's grown from.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for all that you do, Florian. And I'm not going to let you off the hook. We are talking about Movember. I know it may sound a little bit silly and all the serious topics that we have on Serious Country, but it will be December by the time we're back with our next episode. So we have to celebrate. What's your thoughts on growing a mustache or beard over your lifetime?
I'm a happily married man, and I want to keep it that way.
Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful way. Joel, did you hear that? I'm sure, does Sarah have any issues with your beard?
Just not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that. Well, you might have to learn a thing or two from Florian. Thank you so much. That's Florian Graichen, the General Manager from Scion in terms of forest bio waste. My apologies, I've just missed my little part there. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune into Sarah's Country, whether it's live, of course, on demand. As I just said, we will be back on Monday, which will be December, and one more month left and only 25 days then till Christmas. Holy moly. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend wherever you are around the world, and of course here in beautiful Aotearoa, New Zealand. Good night and go well.
This is Sarah's Country.